Sitting by the Fire, a podcast on ancestral wisdom, medicine, heritage, and transformation by Anna Solyom. Hello, everyone. Thank you once again to be here with me and sitting by the fire. And this time I'm here with my dear colleague from Ancestral Medicine Network again, Elah. I hope I pronounce well your name.
Elah.
Elah. Okay, thank you. Elah. Yes, thank you. So Elah, welcome. Thank you very much for accepting this invitation and be here with us today. And will you please present who are you in this present moment and what do you do in this world? I know what you do a little bit, but I would like to hear it from you.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for the invitation, and I always enjoy the times we've been able to connect and interact. So I'm curious to see what will come here. My name's Elah Zakarin. I currently live in Asheville, North Carolina in the US, which is Cherokee land here. And I live it's in the mountains, and I'm looking out at snow and pine trees and a little bit of mountains in the distance, and grateful for that. Feel very held by the land here. Um, my ancestors are all Ashkenazi Jews. Most of them have been on this continent in the United States for about 4 to 5 generations, 3 to 5 generations, one lineage less than that. And prior to that, my ancestors were from Ukraine, Poland, Russia, France. And um, I feel in this moment, their gratitude for my devotion to staying connected to my people who are them and my people who are all people. Yeah. And in terms of my professional life, I do this ancestral lineage healing work, and I'm also in the process of being trained to lead retreats or intensives, lead the 3-day ancestral lineage healing intensives, and I've been doing this for 5 or 6 years, and I also am an IFS, internal family systems practitioner, and have somatic background and many years of Buddhist training and practice as well, and then have steeped kind of in self-study or community study and various other things like the tarot and Enneagram and um, other kinds of ritual and spiritual practice. And my sessions, one-on-one sessions, some will be ancestral lineage healing, some will be more IFS, and some will be an emergent blend of whatever is calling for attention, drawing on whatever practices seem most helpful in that moment. And I work with folks of any background or any, worked with whomever, and also excited to be leading more groups, and grateful for the opportunity to do work that feels really heart aligned and also values aligned.
Yeah. I feel that we have a lot of common ground, to say so. Enneagram was also present in my past very much, or tarot reading. And I don't know IFS that deeply, but I do compassionate inquiry that also conversates with IFS, I would say. Yes. Yeah. And I have one curiosity I like to ask. That's okay.
Please.
Have you grown up with the context of ancestral reverence in your families? Because I know that's more present sometimes in Jewish families. I didn't grow up with it. We didn't grow up, and neither my father, because actually they were like kind of hiding that they were just after the Second World War in Hungary. It was really, really tough situation. But he always tells me that he remembers my great grandmother, who I got to know, and she died when she was, I think, 96 or 97 years old. I was around 6 years old, so I still have some memories with her. And she was really a devotee, a deeply religious person, even after the Second World War. But I, I was disconnected from that by that. And I don't know how was it for you?
Yeah, I love that question. Thanks for sharing a little bit about your ancestors. You know, on the surface, the answer is no. I was not raised with it at all. I grew up in suburban New Jersey, outside of New York City in the US, and like somewhat assimilated into dominant US culture, which is very Christian and not worshiping or in relationship with the ancestors at all in a conscious way, to say the least. And um, yeah, I did grow up with Jewish tradition in my life, and I it was a big part of my life, whether that meant uh, being engaged in it or really hating it or not knowing what I thought about it or, etc. But it was present. And a lot of that came through my very beloved maternal grandfather, who we called Babu. His name was Bob. And my older brother came up with the name Babu when he was one, and it stuck. So Babu died almost 2 years ago. It's like a year and 9 months ago.
Mm.
And he he never pushed religion on us, but it was a big part of his life, even though he wasn't necessarily religious in the kind of classical sense, but he didn't necessarily believe in God even, but he had a deep relationship with Jewish practice and ritual and tradition because it felt like he wouldn't have put it this way at the time, but basically it helped him connect to his ancestors, his parents, and his sense of being part of a tradition and a people. And I definitely was very deeply influenced by that relationship to it. And I carry that forward. I continue that. Um, so in that sense, I would say yes. Uh, and then I would
Mm.
also say things that are in Jewish tradition are, there's a lot of ancestor relationship with the ancestors in Jewish tradition in ways that are sort of both obvious but not necessarily spoken of in that way. So, like, for example, the Amidah, which is recited on Shabbat and daily, depending on how observant you are, there's honoring our spiritual ancestors is a central part of that prayer. So
Wow.
I
That,
had that prayer in my life as a child. I didn't think of it as relating with the ancestors, but in a sense it was.
yeah, I hear you. So there's like the unconscious connection that's there
Exactly.
that comes with the water, what you drink, basically, because it's so part of everyday life.
Right.
And I love how you described it, that maybe your grandfather was not religious in the strict understanding, but he was in a way practicing belonging and staying in relationship with all those who have come before him. Because I
Yes.
think, and as you're also practicing different modalities that are not ancestral lineage healing, I think belonging is a question of one of the biggest question of our times, because either there are a lot of uh, shame. That's what comes with belonging, where we do belong, or there are a lot of broken families. I have a lot of clients who struggle with the belonging to the family where they would love to find a love which is not available for them, unfortunately, or not the way that they would need that, with all those traumas and packages that come. And I know that when I started ancestral lineage healing, after doing many other things, one theme that came through, like, oh, there is it, that, uh, when your nervous system does like this, that, oh, I arrived, I belong.
Mm.
And
Mm.
wow, so this is what I was looking for. So I wonder how How do you feel about belonging
Mm,
with what
hmm.
you do?
Yeah, it's close to my heart, that question. Um, like I mentioned, I my relationship to Jewish practice and maybe more broadly my relationship to being Jewish was there was a lot of wrestling, which is appropriate. That's what Israel or Yisrael means, is the one who wrestles with the divine. So that felt like it was part of my experience of it. And part of the reason for that is I didn't have this understanding as a child, but my understanding of it at the time now is um, wrestling with the complexity of uh, being part of a people who have been targeted with a great deal of harm, and then the way that that harm gets internalized and uh, kind of distorts us. And that's of course not exclusive to the Jewish experience. That's true for so many people, but this was what I was working with in my own life. And
Yeah.
what I've found is that, and part of that kind of process of like seeking deeply for something that had some sustenance, which I at the time wasn't experiencing within this tradition, and wasn't I love my family and I loved them as a child, but I wasn't necessarily experiencing like this deeper soul sustenance or this deeper sense of belonging to people or place or
Mm,
myself in a way.
mm,
And that prompted me to get, in a kind of unexpected way, to go really deep into Buddhist practice, especially Zen Buddhist practice. And I, in a sense, kind of became that tradition feels like it became my spiritual ancestors. And I have a deep relationship with especially Japanese Zen Buddhism as it's been translated into the US. And it has been and was a very, very transformative practice for me. And also, there's a way that I always felt a little uprooted when I was
mm,
younger. I always felt
mm,
a little bit out of place and like there was a hunger that I couldn't
mm,
put my finger on, but
mm,
wasn't being met.
mm.
And I was
I can
maybe
so
half
relate
conscious
to
of it.
that. I can so relate to that, what
You
you're
can
saying.
relate to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like it's in my bones.
Yeah.
This uprootedness, the hunger, the looking for something that can, I don't know,
Yes.
connect to those places. That's very interesting.
Yeah. And it's a very, as I'm sure maybe you have this experience too. It was a very uncomfortable feeling. It's a challenging,
Yeah.
painful experience to have this hunger, this yearning, and to not at the time even necessarily know what it was for.
Mm,
Um, and
mm,
then what happened is, and this is how I got into the ancestral lineage healing work, was while I was living in a Zen Buddhist monastery in the Pacific Northwest of this continent, of the US, and um, long story short, had an unexpected encounter with the ghost of my biological grandfather on the other side, not the grandfather I just mentioned, who I had never met this grandfather while he was living. And it was a
mhm,
very spiritually and psychologically disruptive encounter, um, pretty destabilizing, and also there was a lot of grace in it, in way, because it opened me to something so far beyond my ordinary, very rigid, sort of fearful, stuck kind of consciousness. It just like kind of just cracked me open, was how it felt. And there was many years, I mean, that was a decade ago. So yeah, about a decade ago. And that needing to integrate that experience and work with it and know how to kind of metabolize that is what led me to the ancestral lineage healing practice. It just kind of came on my radar and I could sense like, oh, this can help me address this struggle here with my paternal grandfather. And one of the fruits of that process was, in addition to having some space from this ghost and also having some healing for him eventually was becoming like feeling my place on the earth,
Mm.
feeling that I'm of the earth
Mhm.
and that I'm of the people of the earth. And that in the kind of most basic human sense, in the way that we all are, and
Mhm.
also in the very specific sense of I'm from the Jewish people, and that is where my this and a specific lineage within the Jewish people, and that I felt started to feel rooted in that. And
Mm.
that something in that hunger shifted. Still there. I still have yearning and dissatisfaction, of course. It's not a cure-all, but the something in the ache softened in a really major way through that.
Mm. Yeah, I hear you. And I think this is one of the gifts of tuning to the ancestors and find the best possible fitting way to everyone, which can be different, but finding that way that you can reconnect and reorient maybe in a way to what's there because it's there. So that's really the gift of it that I think for me that in our blood lineages, which really means that in our very blood, that it's in this very body, there is a lot of wisdom. There is, of
Mm.
course, a lot of trouble as well, but there is a lot of wisdom, a lot of medicine.
Yes.
And if we can focus on embodying the medicine, it some ways heals the troubles. Because
Hmm.
in some way, well, I know everyone who practices it, it's know that they go hand in hand in a way. So I love that discovery because I think that for many of us, it's like a repellent when we find troubles and like, oh no, I don't want to know about that. I just want to get off from this train and do something else. But this is like pretty much impossible when you're not possible, absolutely. When you speak about your family and your transgenerational package, whatever that is, because uh, it's just there, the influence, conscious or
Right.
unconscious, it's there and that finding your place in between your people, between that lineage in the earth, like a groundedness that helps to mm, feel in a way that hunger that you spoke about. That's a beautiful gift. That sounds like, that's like really good.
Yes, it does feel like
Mhm.
an incredible gift. And Zen Buddhist and Buddhist practice is still it there were some years where it was not part of my life. I took some time away, and now it is a big part of my life again. But my relationship to it is very different. My relationship
Mm,
to it is much more, it's not coming from a place of lack in the way that it was 8 or 10 years
mm,
ago. It's coming from a place of like rootedness or belonging. And so there's
mhm.
not this same like desperation that there
Oh,
used
yeah.
to be. Um, yeah,
Mm. Can I ask you something around this experience with your paternal
please,
grandfather?
please.
Um, was it like a call that he smashed everything around you, like come and save me, or I don't know. Was it like
Yeah,
that?
what was it like?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
thanks. Um,
If you
yeah,
want to talk about it, if not, that's
I'm
also.
happy to talk about it. I wrote a whole essay in the
Mm.
anthology, the Ancestral Healing Anthology that was
Oh,
published last
okay.
year. My whole
Yeah.
essay was basically about this, so I've already
If
shared very
you
publicly
here.
about it.
Yeah, so the link will be here down in the description. So anyone who wants to read that, that's also there. Right.
Thank you. Yeah. Um, well, it was during a retreat that I was actually not participating in, but because I was a resident in the monastery, it was a retreat for elders. because I was a resident in the monastery, I was still doing a lot of meditation practice, and we were doing a qigong circle up on the grassy meadow behind the building, and had been there for multiple months at that point and was pretty deep in it. And all I can say is that suddenly, inexplicably, the ghost, the spirit of my grandfather, Ed Alter, who I never met while he was living and was almost never spoken of. He was separated from my grandmother after she found out that he had an affair and with another woman and had other kids that she didn't know about. So he was separated from my father when I'm separated from my father's family when my father was 8, and all of a sudden, here he is, and it was partially like I felt his presence here with me at the time, and partially like I was having kind of like a lineage memory, almost like a vision of the lineage. And it was, like I sort of referenced before, it was very disruptive and destabilizing in some ways. And there was also a kind of strange beauty in it because it was like the veil was gone. I was suddenly just available for contact in this way that was so rich. And there had been some glimmers of contact of different kinds before that, but nothing that had this level of vividness. And I remember very vividly once this Qigong session ended, I have no idea how long that experience lasted. Time was altered. But when the Qigong session ended, I still felt his presence, but not as intensely, and immediately went to the forest and just needed to be cleansed. But when I went back to the Zendo, the meditation hall, that space has such a kind of ritual potency and intensity that his presence was really immediately back. And it was like, I remember I could barely stand at one point. Uh, that's a very vivid, like I was bowing and I could almost fell over. Um, and a couple people noticed and supported me, and I was fine. It was like there was not, I was fine, but also there was this weight that was I was holding. Um,
Wow.
and so
Mm.
that was the experience initially, and then I had multiple encounters with him after that that were kind of a similar, not quite as intense as that one, but somewhat similar in dreams or in waking life. And then eventually I was like, whoa, this needs to be addressed in some way directly.
Hmm. And how was that direct encounter for you through ancestral medicine with this lineage and him?
Yeah. Um, I mean, one of the first things that happened was I just had some space. I got some boundary
Yeah.
from
Wow.
what
Yeah.
felt like his spirit was just like right, kind of in, right in me. And there was no sense of like malicious energy per se. There was more
Mhm.
a sense of like he was just distressed and
Mm.
confused and in a lot of suffering and was kind of just like, aimlessly looking for help and just like crashing into things along the way. It's kind of the feeling. Um,
Mm.
and it's interesting. I just felt like talking about the ancestors, they're also here, you know, and I feel them stirring a little bit. Like, oh, what did you say? Like, what was that? So I'll just say I'm listening if there's some adjustments or direction you have for my what I'm expressing. I welcome that. Um, yeah, it was a painful time. And the ancestral medicine, the ancestral lineage healing practice helped me have this space that I needed to be able to see more clearly what was happening. And then eventually, of the first four lineages that I worked with, this was the fourth, the last one that I worked with. Um, and when I eventually got there, probably a few years after that initial experience, I, yeah, was so struck by many things struck me, but maybe what most struck me was the deep desire for repair and the way that, like I referenced at the beginning, the generational trauma of being from a targeted people and having so much of your vitality suppressed or destroyed, how that gets like turned in this way when it needs to be brought out. Like we have this need to express and be of service and give voice to who we are and show our love for people. And when there's not a space to safely do that, my view, at least in what happened in this my lineage, is that can get turned inward. And
Yeah.
because it got turned inward, then it's like this powerful energy that doesn't have any way to express itself. So it gets warped.
Yes. And it's very destructive in
Very
that way.
destructive. Exactly.
Self-destructive.
Exactly. And so once I did the lineage, went through this lineage healing process with this lineage, that is sort of like smoothing or like having this feeling of like spreading out that potency. So it's not like stuck. It's like allowing the river to flow again.
Yes. Yeah.
And then there was a deep kind of healing and remorse that my grandfather could extend of just like really being in reverence, really being in uh, humble apology,
Mm.
not from a sense of I'm bad, but from a sense of I see what went wrong here and I want to honor, acknowledge the impact of that and support
Mm.
transforming that. Uh,
Yes.
and me too. Like I carry that too for the ways that in the ways we all cause harm in small or big ways. And like I kind of carried that same impulse forward of like I also want to support healing and repair. And in some ways I feel I've received that um, aspiration from this lineage. So yeah, did
Mm.
that answer your question? I forget what your question was.
Thank you. It did. It did. It
Thank
was,
you.
how was it like reconnecting with this lineage and his impact? And it's really beautiful what you share. Thank you. Like
Mm,
it really resonated with the deep need for repair, like a different type of hunger that only the spirit word knows. And it feels like really necessary to name it in this moment. That stirring that you
mm,
spoken, I felt some stirring when you named that thing, the deep need of repair. Because and I still feel these waves because I get many times this question, and I'm curious what you will say. I imagine that you get this question as well. So why don't they repair themselves? Why do they
yes.
need the living ones? And
Yes.
it's, oh well, there is the consent part, and there is the free will part, and there is the witness part that is so important, and reconnection, because in some ways the body, the living soma, like the body, mind, spirit, culture, psychic, it's such a force that when that comes, that's my understanding. And maybe that's my question. What's your understanding? How you would answer this question? So I believe we need the living body to be in connection with to the
Mm,
repair, to be complete in a way,
mm, mhm,
to be able to find place in the living word as well, in some way.
mm, mhm, mm. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I've never phrased it in that way, but that is also how I experience it, that there's some cycle of mutuality, or there's some exchange or reciprocity that happens between, the living and the dead, or the seen and the unseen. And I don't know that I can explain why it is that way. I experience it, it just is that way. Um,
Mm.
and there's something that happens when we turn our awareness directly toward the ancestors and directly toward healing. And I think one thing that comes to mind is the power of our awareness, the power of true presence, and how
Yeah.
that in itself is so transformative. That like when we bring love to something, like that's what we need. We don't need to do something so much as being with it is what allows, I mean, I'm thinking about on a like just a human therapeutic level, like being with someone in their suffering or in their trauma without trying to, fix, manage, improve, etc., is such a balm, and so the medicine that we need. And it feels very
Yeah.
similar that we bring our presence and our awareness with the healing, love, and power of the elder ancestors, and that something about the alchemy or the interplay there can support the healing to happen.
Yes, I love that you name it alchemy. I really like that. I always wanted to be an alchemist when I was an adolescent, so I think
Beautiful.
I'm getting close to that, I hope. But yeah, did it change or shift anything in your professional life as
Mm,
you've been working with people, as you went through this process of healing your
mm,
lineages,
mm.
and in your personal life, if you want to add that?
Happy to share. Yes, definitely. Um, yeah, a few things come to mind. One is the the strange magic that is possible. I think
Mm,
prior to this work, I was a little more, I should say, I felt pressure to try to be more linear and more controlled and
mm,
more like rational, for lack of a better word. That
mm.
never felt natural within my body or my being, but I think I felt a pressure to try to do it in that way. And this practice has given me a lot of permission and encouragement to not try to fit in that kind of structure, and to it doesn't really like it just won't is my experience. It's just much more weird and mysterious and non-linear and uh, emergent, and there will be layers of healing and then a time of integration and then more layers of healing, and sometimes it'll feel like something is really stuck and then it'll just resolve really quickly. Like it just happens in mysterious ways. And I think witnessing that over and over again in my own life and also with clients has just given me a confidence of like, oh, actually, what I do, whatever I'm doing in this process it's not much. It's not that much, actually. And I don't mean that in some kind of false, modest way. That
Mm.
doesn't mean it's easy, because it's the challenge is for me to be in a state of aware receptivity and presence and letting love work through us together,
Yes, I
not me doing something.
exactly. I think that's the challenge of our time. I would say that because we're so accustomed in doing, accomplishing things, and like get the things done. And
Yes, right.
that's also like the nervous system when it's in activation, it wants to get thing doing. But
Yes.
there is a quality of life that we cannot really perceive until we are in stillness.
Yeah.
There's like And stillness is not something that we can force in our muscles, like
Hmm.
it's Like you can't force forgiveness, you can't force love. It's not a muscle that you can flex and if you do what you want. So it's really, and maybe this is the journey in some way when someone starts to work with their ancestors, with their people, or getting closer to that point of choice, whether do it or not, that to be receptive, it's first sitting with ourselves also. That's there is a listening inside of us toward
Yes.
ourselves, and
Yes.
that becomes the portal where all those other things can come in, maybe.
Yes.
So, so,
Yes.
so maybe that was it opened you up also, that your grandfather could, oh, there is a door, I'm coming
Uh-huh.
here.
Uh-huh. I love what you're expressing, and two things come to me. One is, yeah, that we like I can only go with you where I can go in myself. And that's like it feels like that's there's something that I love the simplicity of that because what it means is that my task is just to have more and more receptivity and presence to what is here in my own heart and being. And
Mm.
just that in itself will allow other people to go there in their own experience. Uh, and there's a mystery to that. I think it's very beautiful. And I'm also feeling like what you said about like this is the medicine or what we need for these times. I so feel that because that kind of rigid, controlling, pressuring, linear mindset is so feels like so at the root or one of the things at the root of the destruction of the earth, the destruction of indigenous cultures, the you know continuation of harmful systems, patriarchal power. It's like all of these things are like consolidated in this. Like, I am here and I need to have power over or control this other thing and not being in relation, not noticing, not feeling our the web of relationship that we're part of. And the suffering that it is to be feel disconnected from that web of relationship. And then the suffering that then turns into violent violent expressions of that suffering of feeling disconnected in that way.
Absolutely. And something that is rising as you speak, that understanding that maybe it's because we don't want to feel that first pain or first suffering,
Mm,
that we plunge ourselves so much into doing, like
mm,
not in the understanding of original sin, because I don't believe in that. But I do believe that there is an original pain that we don't want to feel, we don't want to deal with that. It's too much, it's overwhelming. Let's just go out and play and do other
right,
things.
right,
Pretend it doesn't exist.
right,
But you
right.
can't, how would you pretend that something below your skin doesn't exist and that your nervous system knows that it's there? So you
Yes,
need a lot of distraction, a lot of hard work in distracting yourself to sit still. And
yeah,
that's another magic, what you named already, and I want to bring it back, that staying with it, that being with it. And I think that's the most difficult thing that we have, because it's impossible without recognizing how we contribute to that harmful systems that you name, patriarchy, for instance, or other all the difficulties that are ongoing in the present world, all the abuse and violence and everything. Those micro moments that we have, because we also have, and it's difficult to know it, what we do when we haven't have that felt sensation of, okay, this might be my responsibility. So it's I don't think it's about to jump after responsibilities, because we also have that self-blaming and all this stuff. So like, give me the responsibility. No, not that one. But what if, um, what if we could find a simple practice of relating with what that is painful with us without the need of dissociating from it and covering it up? What would happen to us in this world?
Mm, I love that question. And I love holding it as a question and seeing what becomes possible through it. And I really feel that in some ways it's the most fundamental, like basic capacity of like being with, being present.
Yeah.
And like you say, it's it's each our own task. Like it's not, I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, those people clearly they need to get more present. Like they're not present, and it's like it might seem that way to me, but then just as you're saying, like, what about all of the ways that I am clearly not present? What about all of the ways that I am also clearly out of touch with my own wound or my own relationship with life? And so like not being in this kind of moralistic stance of like, if only those bad people, and I
No.
know that's not what you're saying, of course, but just
Yeah.
feeling that like, and yeah, and feeling the way that developing that capacity is possible also. Like it's a real human capacity to learn how to be present. But because we don't believe that we can, I think so many, I mean, I feel this in myself, and I think so many of us organize our lives, like you said. We organize our lives, and you also organize our societies and our countries around avoiding the underlying wound, whether it's feeling abandoned as a child or whether it's the forced enslavement of African heritage people on this continent and the genocide of indigenous people here. Like whatever it is that we're avoiding because we think the pain is too much to bear, then we organize the whole world around that avoidance.
Mm. It brings up a lot of emotion in me as you speak and
Mm,
touches.
mm,
And I want to name two things: the power of community.
mm.
I I've been guiding some grief circles last year, the end of the year. I was craving that space myself to be able to spoke things and then to do some rituals around grief because it's difficult to hold grief. Super difficult, but so, 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 so needed. And that I forget the other one. Sorry. That's my brain that is too
Yeah.
tired because here in Barcelona it's late. But it was along the line that, let me just give 1 second. Mm, yeah, maybe it will come back. But oh yes, that we also, when we speak about humanity, as you said, or our humanity, that we can connect and sit and stay there, that I think it's important that, and as a recovering perfectionist, I can say that it's not about being perfect and it's not about owning 100% and being always 100% like good, or I don't know. So that as I know my ancestors and the ancestors of those I'm working with in a way, and with some kinship, your ancestors as well, maybe the ancestral work can help us to bridge that gap in a way, like teaching us that imperfection is part of everyone's lineages.
My ancestors have never asked me to be perfect. I also feel that pressure, but it's not from them. They want me to be here. They want me to be awake. They want me to love. They don't care if my prayer sounds good or is pretty. They just
Yes.
want the actual prayer of my heart.
Hmm. I love that resonance that it brings.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel that.
Mm,
Yeah, that feels touching to me, remembering that.
yeah, we can forget that so easily.
Yes.
Mm. There is something tucking in my mind since some time, so I'm going to bring it in. I don't know what's going to happen with that. Um, I really feel very close to me Thich Nhat Hanh, this
Me too.
Vietnamese monk who created, who contributed in the creation of mindfulness. We can say that with John Kabat-Zinn, and then had his own monastery in France in Pram Village. And I read his in a retreat. I read his book On the Other Shore, which
Mm,
is the new translation of the Heart Sutra, and his description, understanding, and explanation around that. And that was before I got into ancestral medicine, but I was with many different things exploring. And there is a quote from there that I love, and it was here with me, maybe because of you mentioned about his practice, or it's just here. And it is beautiful because it goes like that this body has never died.
mm,
And then he goes on, and then he explains that this body has come from my mother's body, and that body has come from my great grandmother and my grandmother. So this body is a continuation, a living continuation of all those bodies who have lived before me. And I think that it's beautiful.
mm,
Because if you contemplate on that, the whole ancestral work has a different
mm.
dimension, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's, what,
Mm.
what does this do to you as you listen to it?
It touches my heart. Uh, I also have a deep love and appreciation for Thich Nhat Hanh. He was never a primary teacher for me, and I never met him while he was living. But he and also what he built, the legacy of his incredible life and dedication to peace and presence and justice has had a really big impact on my life. And yeah, I feel that. So I just want to say thank you to Ty, as he's known, teacher.
Mm, yes, thank you, Ty.
Yeah. And I remember what it brings in me as another thing that Ty says that is very beautiful, which is that the next Buddha will be the Sangha.
Exactly. The
And
next
I feel that
Buddha.
his life embodied that very beautifully as someone who, in my view, essentially created a new lineage of Buddhism and was so clear that it was always about the community, the web of relationship of all the people who were building it with him, and that there was couldn't leave other people behind. Uh, so, and I feel you extending that to not only the living, but also everywhere that we come from, that we are a continuation of everywhere we come from, and that we will continue, and that may we plant seeds of beauty and peace and repair.
Mm. Thank you, Elah. Thank you for naming that. I find this a beautiful way of closing our togetherness for tonight or today.
Yeah,
This
thank you
moment
so
by the
much.
fire. Thank you for coming to chat. I really enjoyed. And maybe plant those seeds of beauty and reconnection within the seen and the unseen.
Mm, amen. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I really enjoyed getting to be in presence with you.
Thank you. And thank you all who've been here. We hope you enjoyed. So here down you find a link for the anthology that was published last year, if you haven't got that yet, and also to Ty's book and work. You may be interested. And thank you. Bye.